Thank you, Dave, for that blogger news. As you can probably hear, we have the hotline ringing right now. We think it's probably State Comptroller Kevin Lembo. Kevin, are you there?
I can see you. Nice hat.
You like my hat, my Navy SEALs hat? Thank you very much.
How you guys doing?
We're doing great. So what we're reading. I don't know if you read the CT News Junkie article about you and Malloy maybe having some differing opinions about what this deficit ceiling compromise down in Washington, D.C. means for the state of Connecticut. But explain to me what you see in that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I don't think there's much disagreement between the governor and myself. He got a briefing from the Governors Association, and, we were looking at the facts as we understand them. The long and short of it is, and I think you can see this in the split vote of our our House delegation, this isn't as much a resolution as it is larger questions that are coming down the pike. What does $1 trillion over 10 years, half out of military spending, which will likely impact Connecticut, and half out of non-military spending really mean in real dollars? And then what does it mean to impanel a super special secret, I guess they get decoder rings or something, committee to look at another $1.5 trillion, and then using the BRAC Commission model, let them bring their recommendations to the Congress and are up in an up or down vote, and then to hear John Boehner on one side and Harry Reid on the other, one saying, well, we know the committee is structured in a way that there can be no additional revenue. It's going to have to be all cuts. And the other one saying, absolutely, there can be revenue. That's why it's structured the way it is. I don't know what to think.
And when they say cuts, or when they say revenue, they mean more taxes, which I understand. And, I begrudgingly accept Malloy with this ridiculous new tax increase to our income tax. Our guy was just doing it this morning, our comptroller in our office. But here's, what I see, and I try to boil this down to perspective as far as the federal side, and then we can talk about what it means for Connecticut. Federal receipts or our income are way, 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 way short of what our outlays are. Now, I'm talking just our outlays. And then there's also these transfer payments, what we give out in Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. So here's the problem. I see as a percent of GDP, we are right now probably about 16% gross GDP for federal receipts. We're at over 25% of GDP in federal outlays. And what's really scary is those transfer payments are right about that 15-16%, which tells me that we are paying the Social Security, the Medicare, and the Medicaid with our taxes that we send to Washington, and everything else we're borrowing money to pay for, including the USS Ronald Reagan to a page in in the Senate or the House. All that extra money, the president's paycheck is being borrowed right now. This to me means, sure, I understand we may have to increase taxes, but we can't increase taxes an awful lot. But we certainly have to cut some of this stuff. And the biggest discretionary, we have an obligation to do these transfer payments, Social Security, Medicare, et cetera. But the biggest discretionary spending is in defense. Why can't we cut some of the defense? Now, this is not exactly why you're on, but, this has kind of been my bailiwick. Why don't we, if we cut the defense spending by 50%, we're still spending as much as we were spending in the year 2000.
Right.
So,
and because of the tax cuts over time that have gone in and now been renewed, the revenue, as you point out, is obviously short. How does the equation change if you let those Bush era tax cuts expire, for example? How does that change the equation? But I think the larger question, as a federal taxpayer, which we all are, there obviously needs to be real cuts in how much money the federal government is spending. We're going to have to prioritize what we're spending money on. We're going to have to think about all of these things and how much indebtedness we have as a country, and how long before the rest of the world flips to the some other currency as their currency of choice. All of this is on the table, and the loss of confidence in the markets, I think, is playing out, but has yet to fully play out, because I don't know that the trust is there any longer, that our system of government will be able to set aside what is sometimes nonsense in favor of a larger sort of nonpartisan, bipartisan effort to move forward. From my perspective as the comptroller, it raises lots of questions about, we had $740 million stimulus money, last year that carried us over this hump. We know that's not going to be there again, and we didn't budget for it, obviously. But now we start talking about, cuts to Medicaid, which is the thing that most of us are really concerned about, job losses because of defense cuts, potential job losses among state employees, which also impacts, our overall state economy. All of those things together, there are too many uncertain pieces for anyone to feel confident about anything at this point.
I do not disagree with you whatsoever, but this 739 that were $740 million that we're not considering, because it was this one-time kind of shot in the arm from the federal government. But now, if we are, I guess they're trying to trim everywhere. What kind of things are you hearing as far as the cuts to Medicaid, and does that necessarily mean that the state of Connecticut will have to make up that difference?
Sure. Well, look, historically, Connecticut's Medicaid program has always been, a little bit better than the federal government required in a couple of different ways that we probably don't have time to go into all of them at this time. But what that meant is part of our Medicaid spending, we do 100% on state dollar, and, the rest of it, the bulk of the program, is in a 50-50 match with the Fed. So for every dollar we spend, we get 50 cents back from the federal government. There have been proposals in D.C. to block grant those programs. So it's no longer based on utilization. It's no longer based on, the demand and the ups and downs of that demand over time, but rather, okay, Connecticut, you get X dollars because that's historically over the last 3 years been what you've received, but we're locking you in. That's all you're going to get from us, and so you have a choice now. You can, we're going to take the floor away, so you can now give, less than you've been giving, which I guess is a viable option in some quarters. And you're on your own. We're done with you. This is no longer a federal-state partnership. We're just going to give you this one shot, and then you're on your own. That would be really problematic if that idea moved forward through Congress. Bad state budgets that try to say to taxpayers, we're not going to raise your taxes, but what we're going to do is push the tax burden down onto the municipalities. So we're going to cut aid to towns as a way of balancing our budget, and we're going to force the towns to raise your taxes. But we didn't do it to you, right? So that's almost what I'm hearing from the feds is that, okay, we're not going to talk about revenue increases. We're not going to talk about new taxes. But what we're going to do now is start slashing the resources that have been going to the states, and we'll just have the states raise their local taxes. Connecticut can choose to go it alone, take what the feds will give us, and continue to provide the services that we've been providing. We can cut back on things like dental for kids and the rest of it to try to get in under that number.
We voted Obama into office, President Obama into office. One would have thought that he would have been a little bit more in favor of slashing some of this ridiculous spending on defense. Why do you think that hasn't happened?
That's a very good question, and I don't know the answer to that except to say that there have been moments in the last couple of years where I have scratched my head. I'm not quite sure what we're about here. What's the goal? Where are you trying to get us to? In the president's defense, they're trying to balance all of these demands on the federal government and wars and all of this. But if you're looking for the resources, we got to look at that and got to look at the defense budget, and we have to look at the budgets across the federal government, not just at defense.
How much money do we spend on defense? The Connecticut Air National Guard. Does that come out of our coffers?
We do pay into that, but that's federal money as well. There's federal money there as well. But I happen to be up in the office in my house and not in my state office, and I apologize to people of Connecticut for being home so early. But
it's still a little light out. It's only 8:30 at night, Kevin. Come on now.
I know. There's a lot of work to be done.
You freeloader! I can't even believe it. All right, Kevin, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for calling in, and be sure to. Hey, you should stop by the studio another time. It'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be great to do that again. It was fun, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
All right, pal. Thank you, Kevin Lembo. There, the state comptroller, nice enough to call in on the Skype line here.